My name is Emily, and I'm 34 years old. Imagine paying your parents' mortgage for years, diligently, without a single question, only for them to deliberately skip your wedding. They made their choice. So I made mine. This is the story of why I cut them off. And it's not about spite. It's about consequences. It's about the deafening silence from the empty front row at my wedding, and the equally loud silence from a bank account that no longer paid for the roof over their heads. This wasn't just about them missing an event. It was the final straw after a lifetime of feeling invisible. This is how their ultimate betrayal led to their ultimate reckoning. I grew up in a split-level house in a sleepy suburb where the air was thick with the scent of Mom's lavender candles and the earthy tang of Dad's pipe smoke, a nostalgic haze that cloaked our family's unspoken rules. I was the eldest, the reliable daughter, the one who memorized grocery lists at 10, scrubbed pots without being asked, and called every Sunday like clockwork. My younger brother, Kevin, 3 years my junior, was a charming chaos, a whirlwind who left messes and walked away with applause. I'd spend hours raking leaves or helping Mom with her endless sewing projects, patching jeans, hemming curtains, stitching quilts for church fundraisers, while Kevin's rare texts or fleeting visits home sparked glowing pride. "He's got such spirit," Mom would say, her eyes shining as she recounted his latest adventure, whether it was a job he'd quit after a month or a spontaneous road trip with his buddies. Every Sunday, I'd listen to Dad narrate Kevin's escapades, his voice brimming with pride, while my steady life as a project manager, my promotions, my long hours, my quiet routines, went unnoticed. It wasn't jealousy, not exactly, but a slow, gnawing ache. A hum of unfairness I told myself was normal. I was the dependable one, the one who didn't need attention because I was always there, steady as the sunrise, the invisible glue holding our family together. That role became a lifeline 6 years ago. I was 28, living in a one-bedroom apartment with creaky floors, peeling paint, and a finicky radiator that hissed more than it heated. My 10-year-old Honda rattled but got me to work, where I managed complex projects under tight deadlines. My savings, modest but growing, were earmarked for a house I dreamed of. A cozy place with a garden, maybe a porch swing where I could sip coffee and watch the world wake up. During one of our Sunday calls, Mom's voice cracked, thin with panic. Dad's investments, stocks he'd poured their retirement into, had crashed. Their savings were gutted, and they were 3 months behind on the mortgage. "Foreclosure," she whispered, the word heavy with shame, like admitting a sin in church. I didn't hesitate. "I can help," I said, my voice steady despite the knot in my chest. The mortgage was $1,942 a month. I thought it'd be a year, maybe 2, until they recovered. I didn't know it would stretch to 5 years, draining over $110,000 from my savings, my house, my dreams of a European trip, a reliable car, all sacrificed without a second thought. It felt like my duty, the unspoken contract of being the responsible daughter. But my sacrifice was invisible, a ghost in their lives. They didn't scale back. No cruises to the Caribbean canceled, no weekly dinners out at their favorite Italian restaurant skipped. They threw a lavish party for Kevin's 30th birthday, complete with a hired DJ, a custom 3-tier cake, and a rented venue with fairy lights strung across the ceiling, while I wired $1,842 that same week. When Kevin's car broke down, they bought him a shiny new sedan, crowing about his resilience for surviving a tough week without a vehicle. I'll never forget Christmas 3 years ago. The dining table groaning under Mom's famous roasted turkey, cranberry sauce, and pecan pie. Kevin, lounging in his chair with that easy grin, announced he'd paid their $100 cable bill. Mom's eyes welled up. She reached for his hand, her voice trembling with gratitude. "You're such a blessing," she said. Dad clapped his shoulder, his voice thick. "That's our boy, always looking out." I sat there, fork frozen midair. The daughter who'd wired for $1,840 that month to keep their home utterly unseen. The irony was a knife, twisting in my chest, sharp enough to steal my breath. I swallowed my turkey in the bitterness, telling myself it didn't matter who got credit as long as they were safe. But it did matter. Their gratitude, or lack of it, screamed a truth I'd ignored for years. I was valued for what I did, not who I was. Childhood memories sharpened the pain, each one a shard in the mosaic of my neglect. I was 9, standing at the kitchen counter, helping Mom knead dough for her holiday cookies, flour dusting my hands like snow. She'd hum softly, her hands guiding mine, and for a fleeting moment I felt seen, cherished. But then Kevin would burst in, demanding a snack, his laughter filling the room and her focus would shift, her smile brighter for him. At 12, I won a math award at school, my heart swelling as I handed Dad the certificate, expecting his pride. He nodded, distracted, then spent dinner praising Kevin's soccer goal, his voice alive with excitement. At 16, I stayed up all night finishing a science project, my eyes burning, my fingers cramped from gluing tiny pieces to a model. Mom promised she'd come to the fair, but she skipped it to drive Kevin to a party. "He needs me," she'd said, her voice final, leaving me standing alone by my project, the first place ribbon in my hand, meaningless without her there. Those moments piled up, a quiet erosion of my place in their hearts. I'd lie awake as a teenager, staring at the glow-in-the-dark stars on my ceiling, wondering what I had to do to be enough. I thought if I was perfect, straight A's, no trouble, always there, they'd see me. They never did. My job as a project manager was a grind, not glamorous, but relentless. I juggled deadlines, managed teams, and navigated office politics under the hawk-like gaze of my boss, Karen, a micromanager whose emails flooded my inbox at midnight. Her critiques were sharp, her expectations unrelenting. I'd sit at my desk, staring at spreadsheets, my mind drifting to the $110,000 I'd poured into my parents' mortgage. Colleagues took vacations to Italy, bought sleek new cars, moved into homes with picket fences and sprawling lawns. I stayed in my cramped apartment, drove my rattling Honda, and wired $1,842 a month to keep my parents afloat. I didn't resent them. Not then. I believed family came first, that my duty was to keep them safe. But the weight grew heavier, a silent burden I carried alone, unnoticed by the people I was sacrificing for. My best friend, Lisa, saw it. We'd been close since college, bonded over late-night study sessions and shared dreams of escaping our small-town roots. She'd moved to the city too, working as a nurse, her life a whirlwind of shifts and chaos. Over coffee, she'd listen to me vent about my parents, her eyes narrowing. "Emily, you're killing yourself for them," she'd say, her voice sharp with concern. "When's the last time they thanked you?" I'd shrug, deflecting, but her words stuck, a quiet warning I wasn't ready to hear. Lisa was my mirror, reflecting the toll of my sacrifices, but I pushed it down, convinced duty trumped everything. Then I met Sarah, and my world cracked open. It was at Lisa's book club, where Sarah walked in with a dog-eared copy of Dune and a laugh that lit up the room like a sunrise. She was a graphic designer, all warmth and wit, with a mind that danced between art and logic. We stayed up late that night, debating sci-fi tropes over cheap wine, our knees brushing under the table. I felt seen, not as the dutiful daughter, but as Emily, who loved hiking, bad puns, and dreaming about the stars. Our first date was a hike through a forest trail, the air crisp, sunlight filtering through pines. She teased me for tripping over a root, then caught my hand, her touch electric. We spent months falling in love. Late-night talks about our fears and dreams, impromptu dance parties in her tiny apartment to cheesy 80s pop, her sketching me while I read poetry aloud, my voice stumbling over the words. Sarah had her own struggles, a demanding client who changed deadlines daily, a mother who called her weekly with emotional crises, but she carried it with grace. Her laughter a beacon in my darkest moments. Proposing to Sarah was a moment of pure clarity. We were camping in the mountains, the sky a blanket of stars, the air sharp with pine. I'd spent weeks planning, the ring hidden in my backpack, my heart pounding every time I thought of the moment. By the campfire, I knelt on the damp earth, my voice trembling as I asked her to be my forever. Her yes was a burst of light in my chest, her eyes shining with tears as she pulled me up, kissing me fiercely. We laughed and cried. Wrapped in each other's arms, the stars are only witnesses. I called my parents the next day, my voice bubbling with joy, expecting them to share it. Their response was a cold splash of water. "Oh, that's nice," Mom said, her tone flat, almost annoyed. "Is she pregnant?" I laughed, stunned, assuring them it was just love. They didn't ask about the ring, the proposal, or Sarah. It was like I'd told them I'd changed my oil. I pushed down the hurt, focusing on Sarah's excitement, but it lingered. A splinter in my heart. Wedding planning became a battlefield of their indifference. I'd share details. Our barn venue with fairy lights, Sarah's sketches of table settings, her vision for a wildflower centerpiece. And Mom would cluck. "That's flashy for your budget, isn't it?" She had no idea my budget was stretched thin because of their mortgage. I'd lie awake, calculating the $110,000 I'd given them, the dreams I'd deferred. Paris at sunset, a house with a garden, a car that didn't groan at every turn. Sarah's parents, warm and generous, offered to cover the reception, their eyes shining with pride as they toured the venue with us, gushing over every detail. Mine just said, "Good, we couldn't afford it." Their voices devoid of gratitude, as if I hadn't been bankrolling their lives for years. I sent save the dates for October 12th, nearly a year out, and got a vague, "We'll try." The dread grew, a shadow I couldn't shake, creeping into my dreams and waking moments alike. Sarah sensed it too. One evening, as we sorted through RSVPs at our kitchen table, she paused, her pen hovering over the list. "Your parents haven't responded," she said softly, her eyes searching mine. I forced a smile, my throat tight. "They'll come. They have to." But my voice betrayed me, trembling with doubt. Sarah pulled me close, her arms a safe harbor. "Whatever happens, we're in this together," she said, her voice steady. Her strength steadied me, but the fear lingered, a premonition of betrayal. I'd spent years being the good daughter, the one who never faltered. Surely they wouldn't fail me on this day, the one day that was supposed to be mine. A month before the wedding, I called to confirm rehearsal dinner plans. Dad answered, his voice shifty, like he was hiding a secret behind his usual gruff tone. "About that weekend," he started, and my stomach plummeted, a sickening lurch like falling from a height. "Kevin's moving into a new apartment. He needs us for the heavy lifting. His back, you know." The words hit like a slap, sharp and stinging. "Moving? On my wedding day?" My voice cracked, tears burning my eyes as I gripped the phone. "Can't he reschedule? Hire movers? Help on Friday?" I was begging now, my heart racing, my voice rising with desperation. "It's the only day the building allows," he said, Mom's whispers hissing in the background like a snake. "He needs his parents there." The sentence was a blade, cutting through years of denial, slicing open the truth I'd buried. What about me? The daughter getting married who'd kept their home for 6 years? They were choosing Kevin's sofa over my vows, his convenience over my once-in-a-lifetime moment. It wasn't a scheduling conflict. It was a deliberate choice. A neon sign flashing my worth in their eyes. Nothing. I mumbled, "I see." My voice barely a whisper, and hung up. My hands trembling so violently I dropped the phone. Shame flooded me, hot and suffocating. How would I explain this to Sarah's family, to our friends, to the sea of guests who'd see those empty front row chairs? The empty seats loomed like a public scarlet letter, branding me as the daughter whose parents didn't care enough to show. The weeks before the wedding were torture, a slow bleed of hope. I threw myself into preparations, helping Sarah with seating charts, folding napkins, and curating playlists. But every quiet moment brought the sting of that call. I'd stare at my phone, willing them to call back, to say it was a mistake, that they'd be there with smiles and apologies. They didn't. I'd wake up gasping from nightmares of standing alone at the altar, the crowd whispering, pointing at those empty seats, their pity a weight I couldn't bear. I'd see Mom's face, smiling at Kevin as he opened birthday gifts, and Dad's nod, dismissing my achievements with a distracted grunt. The pain was a living thing, clawing at my chest, a beast I couldn't tame. Sarah noticed my silences, my forced smiles as we tasted cakes or picked out flowers. One night, curled up on our couch, she took my hands, her fingers warm against my cold ones. "Talk to me," she said, her eyes searching mine, soft but insistent. I broke, sobbing as I poured out the hurt, the call, the empty chairs, the years of being unseen. She held me, her arms a fortress, her voice fierce. "You are enough, Emily. You've always been enough." Her words were a lifeline, pulling me from the abyss, but the wound was raw, bleeding into every moment, every breath. Lisa saw it too. We met for coffee a week before the wedding, her nurse's scrubs wrinkled from a long shift. She took one look at my face and knew. "They're not coming, are they?" she asked, her voice sharp with anger. I nodded, tears spilling over, and told her about the call. She slammed her mug down, coffee sloshing onto the table. "That's bullshit, Emily. You've given them everything and they can't even show up for your wedding?" Screw them. Her outrage was a mirror to my own, but it also scared me. Her words echoed the part of me that wanted to scream, to cut them off. But I wasn't ready. Not yet. I clung to the hope that they'd change their minds, that they'd see what this meant to me. Lisa hugged me, fierce and unyielding. "You deserve better," she said. "Don't let them break you." Her words stayed with me, a quiet fire kindling in my chest. The wedding day dawned with cruel perfection. Clear blue skies, the air crisp and golden, the barn venue glowing with fairy lights and wildflowers. Sarah was breathtaking in her flowing gown, her eyes locking with mine as we stood at the altar, her smile a beacon through my pain. Her family filled the room with warmth, their cheers and tears a cocoon of love that almost drowned out the ache. But those empty chairs on my side were a gaping wound, a silent scream of rejection that echoed with every step down the aisle. There was no mother-daughter dance, no parental toast to celebrate our love. I smiled through it, my heart splintering with every glance at those vacant seats, the weight of their absence crushing me. Sarah's brother-in-law, Mark, barely 2 years in my life, stood to give a toast. "Emily makes my sister shine," he said, his voice warm, steady. "I'm proud to call her family." The words were a balm and a blade, everything I'd longed to hear from my own parents, delivered by a near stranger who saw me more clearly than they ever had. I gripped Sarah's hand under the table, fighting tears, my smile a mask for the loneliest I'd ever felt in a room bursting with joy. Sarah's perspective was my anchor. After the wedding, as we lay in bed, the quiet of our apartment wrapping around us, she shared her own hurt. "I saw those chairs. Emily," she whispered, her voice trembling with suppressed anger. "I wanted to scream at them for you. You deserve so much more." Her eyes were wet, her fists clenched, and I realized she'd been carrying the weight of their absence too. She'd spent the day shielding me from pitying glances, redirecting conversations when guests asked about my parents, her smile never faltering even as her heart broke for me. Her mother, Ellen, had pulled me aside during the reception, her hug fierce and protective. "You're our daughter now," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "We're here for you." The kindness was overwhelming, but it couldn't erase the public humiliation, the whispers from distant cousins, the awkward pauses when Sarah's aunts tried to fill the void with extra warmth. Kevin's friends, who'd been invited as a courtesy, shot me curious looks, their murmurs a low hum of gossip. I overheard one say, "Her parents didn't even show?" That's cold. The words stung, a confirmation of my shame. We stayed home for a week after the wedding, and the grief hardened into rage, raw and blazing, a fire that consumed the last of my illusions. I'd wake up at night, replaying that call, Dad's casual dismissal, Mom's whispers endorsing it like a jury passing sentence. The empty chairs haunted me, a symbol of a lifetime of being overlooked, each memory a fresh wound. I'd walk through our apartment, my eyes catching on small things. The worn couch we'd saved for, the chipped mug I used every morning, the framed photo of Sarah and me on our first hike. They were markers of a life I'd built despite giving so much away. My job added to the strain. Karen's emails piled up, her critiques sharper as I struggled to focus post-wedding. "You're slipping, Emily," she snapped during a meeting, her voice cutting through the fog of my thoughts. I nodded, swallowing the urge to scream that I was drowning under the weight of my family's betrayal, that I'd given everything to people who didn't even show up for me. Lisa called daily, checking in, her voice a mix of concern and fury. "You okay?" she'd ask, and I'd lie, saying I was fine. But she knew better. "They don't get to do this to you," she said one night, her words fierce. "You've been their bank for years. It's time to take your life back." Her words echoed Sarah's, fanning the flames of my anger. I'd spent years being the good daughter, the one who never faltered, who paid the price for their mistakes. The wedding was the final straw, a public declaration of my worth in their eyes. Nothing. One evening, I sat at my laptop, the bank's auto payment page glowing like a challenge. The $1842 was due in 3 days. Sarah sat beside me, her hand on my arm, reading my silence like a book. "Their absence wasn't just missing a party," I said, my voice low but steady, the fire in my chest burning brighter. "It was a message. For 6 years, I sent them my love, my duty in every payment. Those empty chairs were their reply." Her eyes burned with loyalty, her voice fierce. "You don't owe them anything, Emily. Not after this. Not ever." Her words cracked open a truth I'd buried under years of duty. A truth that roared to life in the silence of that moment. I'd spent my life proving I was enough, believing if I was good enough, responsible enough, I'd earn their love. The wedding shattered that illusion. My money didn't build a relationship. It enabled their neglect, letting them prioritize Kevin while I paid the price. A silent ATM dispensing cash and absorbing their indifference. The next day, I walked through our apartment, my heart a storm. I thought of the house I'd never bought, the trips I'd never taken, the dreams deferred for their sake. And for what? To be erased on the one day that was supposed to be mine? The anger was a fire, clarifying, purifying, burning away the last of my guilt. I remembered a moment from high school when I'd stayed up all night finishing a science project, my eyes burning, my fingers cramped from gluing tiny pieces to a model. Mom promised she'd come to the fair, but she skipped it to drive Kevin to a party. "He needs me," she'd said, her voice final, leaving me standing alone by my project, the first place ribbon in my hand, meaningless without her there. That memory burned alongside the empty chairs, a tapestry of neglect woven through my life. Each thread a reminder of my invisibility. I sat down at my desk on the 14th, the morning before the payment was due. The bank's website loaded, and there it was. Payee, Central Mortgage Corp, amount €840. 6 years, 72 payments, a silent pillar of their lives I'd upheld alone. I saw those empty chairs, heard Dad's excuse about Kevin's back, Mom's whispers sealing my irrelevance. They'd chosen to wound me publicly, deliberately, their absence a declaration louder than words. My hand was steady as I moved the cursor to cancel. A pop-up appeared. "Are you sure?" I clicked yes. The line vanished and a wave of relief crashed over me. Not vengeance, but liberation. A weight I'd carried for 6 years dissolved, like a chain snapping free. I leaned back, breathing deeply. The silence of those empty chairs met by the silence of my bank account. A quiet so profound it felt like freedom. 4 days later, my phone buzzed. Mom's text. "Hi, honey." The mortgage company says the payment's late. Did you forget? Hope you're well. The casual tone was a calculated jab, as if I'd overlooked a chore. I didn't reply. My silence a shield. The next morning, another text. We're worried, Emily. There's a late fee. Please call. The cheer was gone, replaced by a thin veneer of panic. By afternoon, Dad's voicemail, stern and commanding. Call us back. This isn't a game. I let it sit, the silence growing heavier, my resolve hardening. That evening, Mom called and I answered, my voice calm, steady. Hello? Her screech was immediate, piercing. Finally, what's going on? Did you forget the mortgage? They're talking about credit bureaus. I took a breath, the fire in my chest steady. I didn't forget, Mom. I canceled it. The silence was heavy, a dawning horror that felt almost tangible. What? Why would you do that? Are you trying to throw us out? Her voice cracked, but it was anger, not remorse, sharp and accusing. You chose Kevin's move over my wedding, I said, my words like stones, each one deliberate. Choices have consequences. She exploded, a torrent of rage and guilt. After all we've done for you? How dare you? You're an ungrateful child. I laughed, a dry, bitter sound that echoed in my chest. I paid $110,000 to keep your home. I gave up my dreams, my future for you. The least you could have done was show up. Dad got on, his voice a thunderclap, shaking with fury. You listen to me, young lady. You're being petty and cruel. Call the bank and fix this now, or you're no daughter of mine. The threat landed like a blow, but I held my ground, my voice steady despite the tears burning my eyes. You made your choice, Dad. You chose Kevin's sofa over my wedding. I made my choice too. The line went dead, the silence a chasm between us. An hour later, Kevin called, his voice dripping with scorn, the same smug tone he'd used since we were kids. What's your problem, Em? You're really doing this to them? Over a stupid wedding? You're pathetic. My blood boiled, the fire in my chest roaring to life. This isn't about you helping them, Kevin, I said, my voice low, dangerous. It's about them choosing your couch over my vows, over me after everything I've done. You don't get to lecture me. He scoffed, his laugh sharp and cutting. You're jealous. Always have been. Grow up, Emily. I hung up, my hands shaking, the urge to scream clawing at my throat. The next day, Aunt Carol called, her voice syrupy, dripping with false sweetness. Honey, I heard about the misunderstanding. Be the bigger person. Forgive them. Peace is what matters. I snapped, my voice low and dangerous, the fire spilling over. I've kept the peace my entire life, Aunt Carol. I paid their mortgage for 6 years, never complained, never asked for a thank you. They skipped my wedding for Kevin's move. There's no peace left. Only consequences. She gasped, her tone shifting to indignation, but I hung up before she could lecture me further. The calls kept coming, a relentless barrage that felt like a siege. Mom's voicemails turned manipulative, her sobs calculated. How could you do this to us, Emily? We're your parents. We'll lose everything. Dad's messages grew darker, threatening to disown me, to tell the family I'd abandoned them in their hour of need. Kevin sent texts, each one a dagger. You're pathetic. Playing the victim as always. The extended family piled on. Cousins I hadn't seen in years, uncles who barely knew me, all pleading for me to fix it, to restore the status quo. Neighbors from our old street called, their voices thick with judgment, as if I'd burned down the family home. My high school English teacher, Mrs. Larson, left a voicemail, her tone disappointed. Emily, I thought you were better than this. Your parents need you. The community fallout was a storm I hadn't anticipated. At the grocery store, I'd catch sidelong glances from old family friends, their whispers a low hum of gossip. Her parents didn't even show up to her wedding, I overheard one say, her voice dripping with pity. And now she's cut them off? That's cold. The word stung, each one a reminder of my public humiliation. At work, Karen's scrutiny intensified, her critiques sharper as I struggled to focus. "You're slipping." "Emily," she said during a team meeting, her eyes narrow, her tone cutting. I nodded, swallowing the urge to scream that I was drowning, that my family's betrayal had cracked something fundamental inside me. I'd go home and collapse into Sarah's arms, her warmth the only thing keeping me afloat. Lisa came over one night, bringing takeout and rage. "They're gaslighting you," she said, slamming a container of fried rice onto the table. "They act like you owe them, like you're the bad guy." Screw that. Her loyalty was a lifeline, but the weight of the world's judgment pressed down, a constant reminder of my new role as the villain. Sarah's family became my refuge. Her mother, Ellen, invited us for dinner weekly, her kitchen filled with the smell of homemade lasagna and unconditional love. "You're our daughter now," she'd say, pulling me into a hug that felt like home. Sarah's father, Tom, would tell bad dad jokes, trying to coax a smile from me while Mark, her brother-in-law, checked in with texts, offering to help with anything we needed. Their support was a stark contrast to my own family's betrayal, but it couldn't erase the pain. Kevin's friends, who'd attended the wedding, spread rumors, their social media posts vague but pointed. Some people can't handle family loyalty. I wanted to scream at them, to tell them about the $110,000, the years of sacrifice, the empty chairs. But I stayed silent, letting the fire in my chest burn hotter. A month later, a long email from Dad arrived, a rambling masterpiece of deflection. "We're sorry you feel this way," he wrote, followed by a litany of their woes, late fees piling up, credit threats looming, the stress of it all threatening their health. Not a word about the wedding, no apology for the empty chairs, no acknowledgement of my sacrifice. I read it, my heart a stone, the fire in my chest now a cold, hard resolve. I replied with one paragraph. "Your actions showed I'm not a priority. So your finances aren't mine. I'm focusing on my family now. I wish you well." I set their emails to filter to trash, a final act of self-preservation, the click of the button like a door slamming shut. The silence was deafening, but it was mine, a quiet I'd earned. The months that followed were a revelation, a slow unfurling of a life I'd forgotten I could claim. The $1,842 now went into a savings account for me and Sarah, a tangible step toward our future. We toured houses, dreaming of a backyard for a dog, a kitchen where we'd cook together, a porch swing like the one I'd always wanted. Sarah became my anchor, her love a mirror reflecting my worth. Her laughter a reminder that I was more than my family's neglect. But the grief lingered, a quiet shadow that followed me. I'd stare out windows, replaying childhood moments. Mom's rare smile when I got straight A's, Dad teaching me to ride a bike, his hands steady on the seat before he let go. I grieved the family I'd wanted, the parents who'd never see me, the love I'd chased my whole life. But I gained something greater, self-respect, a hard-won truth that my worth wasn't tied to their approval. Family wasn't blood. It was Sarah's hand in mine, Ellen's warm hugs, Tom's bad jokes, Mark's quiet support. Cutting that financial cord severed a toxic emotional one, a wound that was finally beginning to heal. At work, I pushed back against Karen's criticism, channeling my newfound resolve. I stayed late, reworked projects, and earned a grudging nod of approval. "Better," she said one day, her tone less sharp. Lisa noticed the change too, her eyes lighting up when we met for coffee. "You're different," she said, grinning. "Lighter, like you're finally free." I nodded, feeling the truth of it. The empty chairs still haunted me, a ghost that lingered in quiet moments, but they were also a turning point. The moment I stopped begging for love and started claiming it for myself. One evening, nearly a year later, Sarah and I sat on our balcony, wine glasses in hand, the city lights sprawling below like a sea of stars. "You did the right thing," she said, her voice soft but sure, her hand finding mine. You chose yourself, Emily, and I'm so proud of you. I nodded, tears prickling my eyes, the fire in my chest now a warm glow of hope. The empty chairs were a scar, a reminder of the family I'd lost, but also of the strength I'd found. I was no longer the invisible daughter, the dutiful machine dispensing cash and absorbing neglect. I was Emily, wife, partner, friend, architect of a life no one could shake. I looked at Sarah, her face glowing in the twilight, and felt a peace I'd never known. What would you have done? Was I justified, or did I go too far? Share your thoughts or your own story of breaking free. Thanks for hearing mine.